Good morning, evening, afternoon guys, my name's the Adinator and today I'm going to be comparing two entry-level Canon cameras to see if a DSLR or a camcorder is the better camera to buy. So the DSLR is the Canon EOS 200D and the camcorder is the Canon Legria Hf R76. Both of them are roughly in the same price range of £200 to £500, but obviously one is a DSLR and one is a camcorder. Before we begin, if you haven't already, smash the like button if that's what you're into, and subscribe if you're new here, because you know I make good videos. Maybe.
Let's get started.
Price. So, for most people who are buying entry-level cameras like these, this is their biggest concern. The Legria retails for about £230, which is $300 if you happen to not live in the UK, while the 200D goes for a somewhat more considerable £520. So technically, if it's what you're into, you could have two Legrias for the price of one 200D, but I'll leave that option up to you after this video. Obviously there are additional costs afterwards, especially if you are absolutely starting out, like microphones and tripods and lights, but the 200D does have the additional cost, which the Legria doesn't have, of additional lenses, which can get quite expensive. Taking pictures. Where's the Legria, John? Now, the Legria does have the ability to take pictures, and according to Canon's website, it takes them at 1920 by 1080 resolution. There's no physical button that you press, it's purely, instead you press a button on the LCD, which takes the photo. Unusually, it's kind of confusing, the process. You don't really know if you've taken a photo, because if you go on to the playback mode on the camera, you can't actually see the photos you've taken until you actually put the SD card into the computer and see what it's taken. Really, the Legria is designed for video taking, not photography. An alternative way of taking photos with the Legria, if you actually want to see what you're shooting after you've shot it, is just by taking a short video of what you're shooting and then just screenshotting it later. So if you want to be taking photos, you are going to go more on the DSLR route, or if it's completely out of your price range, something like a little point and shoot, such as the Canon EOS 160. The 200D, on the other hand, does have the option to take pictures, and those pictures are fairly crisp, I must say. Obviously, the lens that you have on completely changes the kind of picture you can take. The lens I have on here is the 18 to 55mm, but if you are like a wildlife photographer or you take pictures of sports, you're going to be wanting something like a telephoto lens, which can really ramp up the price. The 18 to 55mm lens is quite a good starting lens, especially if you want to be doing videos like this or vlogging. I mean, there's an 85 to 55mm lens that you're watching this video now on, and I mean, it can go wider and it can go a bit more zoomed in. So obviously it depends on what you want to be doing with this camera. Although I will also say that the 200D does have the option to take raw photos, which is a big thing nowadays if you are into photo editing and you want to do more editing with the photos that you take. So having the ability to take raw photos with the 200D is nice, I must say. The Legria, on the other hand, doesn't have any options for photos, so taking videos. Again, huge category that is quite important, and funnily enough, both cameras do have the ability to take photos. They both shoot at 1080p, which is full HD, and is ideal for internet videos on YouTube or Vimeo or wherever you want to do. Neither of them have the ability to shoot 4K, which I guess is a downside in some people's eyes for the 200D because of its higher price. Some people would expect 4K option, but it's not that. The video actual resolution and quality from both is pretty good. I mean, the 200D does have the dual pixel autofocus, which makes the background slightly blurred and my actual face in more quality. Obviously, again, the video quality on the 200D is going to be hugely variable depending on the lens that you have, so it's hard to compare them because the Legria doesn't have the option to change lens. It's just, you're just stuck with the one that's in there. The video that you're watching right now is being shot with the Canon 200D, and And the video you're watching right now is being shot with the Legria. You decide which one you prefer, although, you know, I prefer the 200D, although, you know, that's just me. Frame rate. The Legria shoots at 30 frames a second or 25 frames a second, depending on your country, which is just standard video and is what pretty much every camera universally shoots in. The 200D does have obviously the option to shoot at 25 or 30 FPS, but it does also have the option of 50 and 60 frames a second, again depending on your region, which allows you to have much smoother video and the ability to film in slow-ish motion. But if you do want to do sort of slow-mo stuff, you do want a higher frame rate, so 120 or 240 FPS would have been a nice option to have, but you know, twice the money, twice the frame rate. You can't really complain with that. So I dumped some water out somewhere and filmed it with both cameras. Here is the Canon Legria filming at 30 FPS. And this is the Canon 200D filming at 60 FPS, so it should look considerably smoother. It looks smoother, right? Audio. This is quite a crucial point for cinematographers and filmmakers out there. Obviously, if you're pretty serious about filmmaking, you will already have an external microphone, such as this blue Snowball or this lav mic, something along those lines. There's also things like the Rode video mic that is currently plugged in. Hello, this is probably really loud. But then again, if you are just starting out, then you probably don't have an external microphone, so you will have to be going with the integrated microphone on either camera. This is what the audio of the Canon 200D sounds like without the Rode microphone on top, so just the integrated microphone as it is completely naturally. The integrated microphone, by the way, sounds like this. It's not great, but it could be a lot worse. There are cameras out there with much worse integrated mics than this. So you can get by and it doesn't sound too bad. There's not really that much noise in the background. It's somewhat decent. Now the great thing about the 200D is that it does have a hot shoe mount on top, this thing on top, which means you can put a microphone on it, and then it has a mic jack on the side, a 3.5mm input jack, which means you can just plug in a microphone and the camera will use that for its primary audio source. I'm not in focus. On the other hand, the Legria does not have that option. The top of it has no hot shoe mount and there is no option anywhere around it for a 3.5mm headphone jack. Your options for audio are considerably more limited. Unless you have an external microphone which you can record audio separately with, you're stuck with the integrated microphone. Portability. This is another very important category for many people out there who, like me, find themselves traveling with their cameras quite frequently. Having a camera that's not only durable but lightweight and small is obviously advantageous in this category. In regards to footprint, the Legria is considerably smaller than the 200D. If I put them next to each other, I mean, the Legria is just like the 200D without the massive lens. Yeah, there's quite a big difference in regards to size. Another advantage of the Legria, which has technically been a disadvantage in other categories, is that it is completely all-in-one. There's no extra lenses, there's no extra microphones, so you can just carry it as it is. I have on many occasions just been walking through, I don't know, an airport or something, and I've just slipped this into my pocket because I haven't been using it, and it fits in a pocket. Obviously for women's fashion, which doesn't seem to have any pockets or tiny pockets, you're out of luck, I'm afraid. The Legria is therefore much easier to travel around with than something like the 200D, which is huge, a lot heavier, and it's not going to be fitting in anybody's pockets anytime soon. However, I will say that Canon do advertise the 200D as being their lightest DSLR they've ever made. It isn't too bulky compared to a lot of other DSLRs, but still, you're gonna have to put it in some sort of backpack if you don't want to carry it, because it's not gonna fit in your pockets any day of the week. Zoom, slightly more niche category this one, but for those people out there who like filming animals or sports from quite a distance, a good zoom capability is nice. Optical zoom and digital zoom, they're very different things. Optical zoom is just using the lens and loses no quality as it enlarges the image. Digital zoom just zooms in on the picture digitally, and so you lose a lot of quality. Optical zoom therefore being much more preferable. The Legria has 32 times optical zoom, 57 times advanced zoom, and 1140 times digital zoom. And for a camera that is, I mean, it's quite long, but it's not huge, that's pretty good, actually. The zoom on this thing is impressive. Here's an example of me zooming in to the maximum it will zoom into with the Legria. The zoom, however, isn't technically manual. There is, as you can see, a slider on the top which you move either side and it zooms in at a set rate. The rate is not, as you can see, sluggish, but it isn't exactly fast either. So if you're there like, oh, there's a falcon, I need to get it quick, and you're there just like, come on. Not ideal. The 200D on the other hand, it obviously really depends on the lens. The 18 to 55mm lens zooms in this much. Not a lot, I mean, it's just that much. On the other hand, if you get something like a telephoto lens, or just, I mean, this one is 80 to 200, it zooms in considerably more, but obviously that's an additional expense, which not everybody can afford. Weatherproofing. Neither camera is splash-proof, waterproof, dust-proof, or anything like that. So if I was caught in the rain with either of these cameras, or both, I would not have any more hope for either one of them. In fact, I'd probably say that the Legria, due to its lack of additional parts and accessories, probably stands a better chance, because there are less things and bits of it to get water into or dust. I will say, actually, I have been caught out in heavy rain with this thing before when we were filming the Chase 2. It just started raining extremely heavily. And despite getting quite wet, the Legria was absolutely fine. So I guess you can get away for fairly short periods of time in the wet with the Legria. I don't know about the Canon 200D, although I assume it's not quite as weatherproof. But as long as you don't drop it into a toilet or whatever you're doing, you should be okay. Stabilization. Shaky footage is a thing of the past, according to GoPro, actually, which is completely unrelated. But it's very undesirable. Optical image stabilization in that case is desirable, and the Legria has it. Optical image stabilizer. It's slightly different with the DSLR. It's not the body of the camera that stabilizes, it's the lens. Certain more expensive lenses do have optical image stabilization built in. The one on here, the 18 to 55, does not. In shaky footage scenarios, the Legria may well cope better, but again, that completely is dependent on what lens you have. Flash. The 200D has a flash. The Legria does not. Battery life. Both cameras actually have fairly hefty batteries. If you look at the Legria here, the battery is, I mean, it's a large part of the actual camera. I mean, it's like a third of it. One thing I must say that I really do like about the Legria is that it lasts so long on a single charge. I mean, when I got it brand new, it lasted over 3 hours on a single charge, although Canon only advertises as having about a 2.5–3 hour battery, but when I got it, it was well over 3 hours. The 200D also has a fairly chunky battery, also obviously rechargeable. The battery life of the 200D is roughly the same, although it is powering a much bigger camera, and if you are plugging in a microphone that requires the camera's battery source, that's obviously going to drain it more. Again, I'm going to have to give this point to the Legria. Another actually advantage of the Legria is the fact that it tells you how long the battery has left, which is so nice. I can't explain to you how nice it is to know exactly how long it has left. Both cameras have flip out LCD screens. Here is the 200Ds and here is the Legria's. They appear to be about the same size. The Legria's appears to be slightly wider, although they are both exactly the same size, at a fat 3 inches. They're both touchscreen, which is really nice, although the touchscreen on the 200Ds is a bit more precise, I've found. Another major advantage of both of them is that they are completely rotational 270 degrees, which is a major advantage if you are, like I am now, filming yourself and do not have a cameraman on hand to film you. So nice, and I don't know why it is such a rarity in the DSLR world, because not many DSLRs have a flip out LCD screen. The camcorder, the Legria, it's been commonplace on camcorders for years to have flip out viewfinders, so no surprise there that flips around as well. And there you go, there is my review and comparison of both the Canon EOS 200D, also called the Rebel SL2 I think, and the Canon Legria Hf R76. Both are excellent cameras and both have their advantages and disadvantages. You, like me, probably came to the conclusion that the 200D is a better camera, but then again, as I said at the start, it is worth twice as much as the Legria. So would you rather have 2 Legrias or 1 200D? I recommend both to you depending on your needs and your budget. So there you go, thank you very much for watching. As I said at the start, make sure to smash a like if that's what you're into and subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video.